Good morning and welcome to Kramer's Corner with Daily Technical Update. It is Nvidia day. After market today, they are expected to release earnings, and that's going to be interesting. There is a lot of options with a strike at 130 here, so we have massive interest in this region. That's why it is being hit. It is hitting 130 several times. So a key question tonight will be: will it break higher, or will it drop lower and being rejected? But to cancel this top and reversal pattern we have on Nvidia twice actually here back in July, and the key one here back in June, bearish engulfing both times, and also on the weekly chart we can see here massive bearish engulfing there. So they need to be cancelled, and that means we need to have higher highs, and to begin with 136.15 is the next one. So that is something to look out for tonight. Also very quickly on Tesla. 207.67 is being tested. We are below the 55 moving average despite it's rising. It never pushed to positive sentiment on the RSI. If it starts sliding lower here, I think it will slide lower in the coming days and weeks, still below the cloud. So that is also a bit of a worry if you are a Tesla owner. It really needs to close above 234 and a quarter to change that picture there. So it can be a bit of a struggle. On the index itself, the S&P 500 still just below to cancel this bearish engulf, but it's still in play. But we are in a positive sentiment, and we are bullish above the cloud here. So again, Nvidia could be the decisive factor there tonight. Nasdaq also bearish engulfing here is still in place, despite having a little bit of a positive sentiment. Actually did close above 60 threshold, but it needs to close back above 20,211 to close this gap. Also very strong resistance and all the top reversal pattern. So we are at an interesting days, and again Nvidia could be the decisive factor here. EUROSTOXX 50 seems to have another go to crawl about the 49.07, 49.08 resistance area. We still have the 100 moving average coming down, but now we are above 60 threshold. Can it close above 60 threshold? Then we are in a positive sentiment, and there's potential higher for EUROSTOXX 50 DAX. Also pushing higher. This morning testing resistance 18,779.70. 780 around this level. You can see there's strong resistance going back also here in June, but we are very close to the all-time highs, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that being tested and even taken out. The Amsterdam index still struggling, hovering just above 907 here, but below the 55 moving. It seems to be a struggle. We need the RSI to move into positive sentiment, but there's some strong overhead resistance. If it can't do that, and of course also Nvidia can affect the AX index, because if we have ASML in Belgium and a few other semiconductor-related stocks that constituents in the index, so that can also affect that. So maybe that's why it's a bit of a wait-and-see position. If it drops below 900, expect selling pressure to increase. CAC 40. Tested the cloud yesterday. We are in a positive sentiment there? Yeah, just with very close to. So it seems like a top and reversal indication here. There is still room up to 77.25, where there's strong resistance, but I'm not quite sure we'll get up there. I actually think we will see it sliding lower here in the next couple of days. Swiss market. Formed actually, well, it is a bearish engulfing, but it's on the back of that little candle there, so it's not really counting that much, to be honest. But it is struggling a little bit for further upside. I still believe it could push higher as long as it stays above 12,219. If it breaks below that, well, then we are in for a bit of a correction. But the all moving averages are pointing higher, indicating we are likely to push higher, and also RSI in a positive sentiment with no divergence, indicating we are likely to push higher on the Swiss market. Seems to be correction time in euro dollar. It's forming this very steep rising wedge here. spiked higher to 112. There's still room to 112.75, which we have been looking at on the weekly chart. As you can see here, there's still room up to this resistance here on 112.75, but it seems like maybe this is not the time to do it. If it breaks below the lower rising trend line there, expect a correction down to around 110.40 around this level. That's the 38.2 retracement. We have a little bit of a support there, to be honest, and maybe that could be it. Seems like in this region here, there seems to be some support, but it can't drop lower. But I think we will see that materialize and then a push higher. Also, given that we're looking at the weekly chart, we are moving higher on euro dollar on the medium term. A pair that is not moving higher is, that is seriously cancelled at the moment. Euro sterling, I think it can get down to the 84 level, where we have some strong support around this level, maybe dipping a little bit lower. We are currently trading below the 786 retracement. The RSI is going into bearish sentiment or negative sentiment, so we could see a push down to around 84, and then we are likely to see a bounce. Cable pushing higher, and there is room. If we're looking at the weekly chart, we can see there's really not any strong resistance on that one, and we can remove this one because it was not a rising wedge. It is very strong uptrend indeed, but it is also stretched a little bit similar to the euro dollar. But I think we could push higher in the coming days and weeks. A little bit of a correction, but keep an eye on. We see we have reached 161.8 retracement, almost there. I think we'll do that. And also, especially if we get the euro sterling down to around 84, so we could get a top in place around 133, and then a correction. But be aware of it. It could certainly hit cable, but there's no divergence on the RSI at the moment. So let's see, are there? There's a little bit actually. There's a little bit. This one is lower than this value here. So there's actually, we are stretching in the bullish trend on cable. Dollar yen, well, it's still keeping itself above the 786 retracement, 143.32, and just below the falling trend line here, declining trend line. So there's still risk lower, and there's no divergence on the RSI, indicating we could drop lower. So that will be key here the next couple of days. Will it break out to the upside, or will it just basically step sideways out? That's also sometimes happens. Or could we see further selling pressure down to 142.5, 141.70 in this region here? Let's see about that. Maybe even for forming a double bottom, but that's too premature to talk about that. But look out if it takes out the 786 retracement. I think we will have a push lower. Euro yen still testing the 160 spot 55 support, just a few cents above the 38.2 retracement of this bounce here. If it takes it out, which I believe it will. As we can see, we are actually RSI in negative sentiment back, and now also back up below 40, so we could have another go. If it does, then we're looking at 158. And Aussie yen, very sideways range here, 96.75 still needs to take out that for a downside potential. Sterling yen, caught range bound 192, 189.30. That's the level to look out for. Aussie dollar spiked a little bit higher, which was quite interesting. So it's actually spiked a little bit higher here, so we can move that on. Was that the correction? I think it could be the last graph, but let's see. We still need to have in place. There could be room down to around the 66.50. That will be a quite large correction, but given that massive move here, it's not that big for Aussie dollar actually. So 67 is a minimum, but 66.5 around these levels, 66.35 could be seen. But still, I need a top and reversal pattern in place. But it seems like it's stretched a little bit, so we are actually seeing some divergence here on the RSI. There's imbalance. Can't really. These values here are lower than this value. value there. So I think we'll see correction hitting Aussie dollar fairly soon. And dollar Canada, expect a bounce from current levels, and let's get rid of this one and add a new one. And that was actually a massive move. Oops, sorry. Let's do that again. That was actually a massive move on the dollar Canada lately. I mean, I think we'll see over the coming days and weeks slowly crawling back towards 135.90s, which was a strong support, maybe even spiking up to the 38.2 retracement. I'm not quite sure about that because we still, as you can see, we still have some resistance here. Now we also have the 200 moving average coming down, but we should see a correction. Oversold, but no divergence, indicating there's still a risk to the downside. Swiss market, or Swiss franc, Euro-Swiss, as we talked about yesterday, that when it started trading below the 38.2 retracement, that it would probably drop lower, and now it seems like it's dropping to the 61.8 retracement at 93.55, and it possibly even lower because we are in a negative sentiment on the RSI, never got back above 60. I think we'll see a push lower, maybe even down to around 93 in coming days and weeks. It really needs to get back above 95 to just, some upside potential, but the trend is down. On the dollar Swiss, actually new lows there, taking out the previous low here from August, very close to the 84, could bounce a little bit. Now we are actually having some divergence. You can see here, it seems to be an exhaustive move. So I think we will see a little bit of bounce in the next couple of days. Let's get rid of this one. But if it takes out 84, then we'll look at 83, 30, 35 level. And we are in a downtrend if it takes out that level there. But I would expect a little bit of a bounce. Dollar index also expect a bounce. Also given that we're likely to see a correction in the euro dollar and possibly also the cable and a few others. 100 spots 32 around this level. We can see where it comes from. It's actually back there, but it's also back around here. So this seems to, it's not the strongest one, but it seems to be a little bit significant. I would expect a correction, and what we can do is okay, how far can it actually go? Well, we are looking at, there we are, I would say up to around 101.5, maybe a little bit more. Gold seems to be in a correction phase now, but we are still uptrend, higher highs, higher lows. It's basically all the closing prices. And if we're just quickly looking at the future, same picture here really. We are in an uptrend, and if we look at the future, you can see very steep rising trend line being tested at the moment. Going back to the spot gold, well, 24.84. Key support. If it takes out that little spike down there at 24.70, expect a correction down at below 24.50, possibly testing the lower rising trend line there. But also here we have steep rising. It's merely a guideline that is strong. It's not really a strong support in any means, but it is just a guideline saying, well, if it breaks that, well, then we could see the 24.84 support and the 24.70 level come under pressure. Silver also hit by selling after hitting $30, testing the 29.45. It's now a support, but it needs to break below the 28.75. If it does that, well, then suddenly this this bullish correction pattern here has been demolished. I really want to see it back above 30, closing above 30 for going full bullish on silver. Copper did close well above the support or the resistance at 422.35. If it does close back below, well, then we could be caught range bound, and we also need the RSI to close above 60. You can see here that it actually got rejected, and that's a little bit of a weakness, to say the least. But we are still in a rebound phase. But if it closes below 422, then we could see a dip down to around 415, 410. And looking at oil, it's basically the same picture I've been painting for quite some time. It's still this triangle pattern needs to break out, or it can take some time. So there's a lot of volatility. I still believe it will break out to the downside, but let's see. It's still not decided just yet. So let's wait for that. US 10-year yields still holding on above the 379. Dipping down a few times, but it seems like forming this pennant. It's called a pennant because it's actually a wedge, but a pennant is a shorter version of it. A wedge is when we have, you know, like 3 weeks of a pattern forming. It did break out to the upside, but it couldn't get upside traction. I think if it does move back above 390, then we're looking at 4% again, but it could also slide lower. So a little bit indecisive, but still in a bearish trend, very short term. All right, that's all for today. Have a nice day and happy trading.